everybody out there in the bookverse, it's Stephanie, and today I'm back with my December wrap-up. I actually have a lot of books to talk about for December, a lot more than I was expecting because I felt like I kind of failed at TBR Star Hop, which, let's be honest, I did, but I still read a lot of books, so I'm still really proud of the reading that I did and the amount that I got through. Little disappointed that I didn't win TBR Star Hop, but it's okay. I am okay with that, and let's jump into the books, starting with the books that were DNFs. The first book is a fairly soft DNF. I don't feel like this is a book that I have totally written off and I'm not going to ever finish. I just feel like I really was not in the mood for this, and I was buddy reading this with Joe, and he felt the exact same way and was really relieved when I was feeling that way as well, so we didn't have to force ourselves to keep reading it, and that is Tigana by Guy Gabriel Kay. I just wasn't feeling the writing style. It is very descriptive. It feels very fancy, and I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it is just very beautifully written and sometimes a little bit over the top and inflated writing, but I think I would love to get back to this someday when I'm in the mood for it. I just was not feeling it. The world building wasn't hitting with me. I just wasn't loving anything about it at this time, but I think it was my mood, and I think Joe felt the same way. I didn't get too terribly far into it, like a decent chunk, but I could definitely see myself reading this book again, finishing it when I'm in the mood for it. So it's not that I didn't like it and it's done. It just wasn't really my timing. I need to be in the mood for writing like that. The next book is a DNF, and I do not ever see myself going back to it because I was so bored. I didn't care. I never wanted to keep reading it, and I felt like I was just forcing myself to read it when I wasn't liking it, and it was putting me into a reading slump in a month that I had big plans to read a lot. And that is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. So I started this in November because this was a subscriber pick, and I got practically nowhere, so I continued on in December with it, and I just didn't care. Like, I couldn't care about it. I just wanted to not be reading it. When I was reading it, I was so bored. I felt like it was almost him redoing The House in the Cerulean Sea, just with some different characters and characters that I liked a lot less. Nothing was happening. I wasn't invested in the characters. I wasn't feeling anything from this book, and I felt like some of the things that were being done and the way people were acting was extremely insensitive and rude. One of the things that bugged me, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler because it happens right at the beginning, is that our main character died and he was supposed to be reaped by, I guess she's a reaper, you could call her that. She was supposed to collect his soul and bring it to the ferryman to move on. And one, she was late, which, I mean, I'm not blaming her too much for that. It was her very first time doing it solo. So it's like, okay, we'll give you a little bit of a pass. But then she finds him at his funeral and she's like laughing him almost and mocking him for how he was found at his funeral and the way people were talking about him and his life. And then she's expecting him to just follow her and go with her, and she's not really giving him any reason to. She's not inspiring any trust. And then she's not warning him of things that are going to happen. I mean, he has this giant hook just pop out of his chest and he's freaking out. She's like, oh yeah, that happens. I'm like, maybe warn people a little bit. And then when bad things happen as she's trying to reap his soul, it's like she's blaming him for messing up her first solo reap. And when she goes back to the place that she's supposed to take him, and she's talking with people and they're literally just mocking him in front of his face. And then she's like, oh, well, could you give me a high rating because I want to get like a 5-star review on this. I'm like, this isn't about you. And the whole thing, they just made it about her. Be like, oh, you successfully did your first reap. That's so amazing. And he's sitting there like, I'm dead. I'm freaking out. And y'all are really treating me poorly. And granted, he wasn't the greatest guy in life, but that's really not their job to judge, I don't think. I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to go into that line of work, maybe you should treat people a little bit better and make it a little bit less about you. And then she would get mad at him for saying things insensitive, but she would do the same thing constantly. I just couldn't stand it. It was driving me nuts, and I was bored, and I didn't care. And I was like, eventually he's probably going to move on, and I just don't care. So I got about that far into it and just decided that I needed to stop because I wasn't wanting to read at all anymore, and that was not a great feeling. I was having high hopes for my December read, so I'm so sorry to anyone who loves this book, but I had to DNF it. Next, I'm going to talk about a few books that I read on my phone through Scribd, and I read these for read-alongs, readathons, like little mini readathons that I did for myself. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Lumberjanes. I read the first volume of this, and it was fine. It was this cute graphic novel that followed these girls at this summer camp, and it followed them on their adventures. I felt like it was a little bit confusing. I really was kind of confused about what was happening at times. I wasn't sure if this was in the head or reality. I didn't know if it was like these kids just kind of making up these fantastical stories. I don't know. It was a little bit odd to me. It didn't feel like it was really that exciting or interesting, and it was almost like a Mickey Mouse Clubhouse adventure that we were going on. Like, oh, now we have to go to this next place. And it was fine. I didn't dislike it. It was really, really fast read, but it was nothing groundbreaking or exciting for me. The next book that I read to get through really quickly for a readathon was The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And again, it was fine. I didn't think it was anything amazing for me in particular. I almost fell asleep while I was reading it because it was just this very slow, calming book, it felt like, and it was very cute. It was sweet. It had these nice quotes about life and kind of these deeper meanings and deeper thoughts on it, and I feel like the mole was kind of always this one's like giving these little snippets of wisdom, and it was just fine. I didn't love it. I know some people bawl in that book, and I know some people absolutely adore it, but I maybe am a little bit unfeeling because I was not the hugest fan. It was just okay. Next, I'm going to briefly talk about the books that I read for my 48-hour mini TBR Star Hop readathon that I did, because I did talk about them more in depth in that video. So I will link that so you can check that out if you'd like to see more thoughts on these books. The first one that I have is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, first book in her Throne of Glass series. This is a YA fantasy series that follows this assassin that has to compete in order to become the king's assassin and earn her kind of essential freedom. And I thought it was a lot of fun. So I don't think this is amazing writing. I think there was a lot of very corny and tropey parts to it. I think that this character was super extra and over the top, and I actually very much enjoyed my time reading this book. She reminded me kind of Spensa from the Skyward series, how she was just so extra, and you're just like, oh, it's endearing. I had so much fun with it. I was invested in the plot. I could see how it was a little bit simply done and there were some plot holes there, but it was fun. I really enjoyed my time reading this book, and I will definitely be continuing on with this series. Next book I enjoyed much less, and that is The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. I feel like Alice Hoffman's books are very hit or miss with me. Either I really like them or I really don't, and this was on the side of I really don't like it, which is unfortunate because it's a book my husband picked out for me and I was really hoping to love it. But this book is another book in her kind of practical magic companion novel series, and it follows the Owens family, who are a family of witches, and in this one of the aunts hears the Death Watch beetle, and so we're kind of following the time leading up to her death and then the time afterwards, and I just felt like there was some very obnoxious insta-love in this that I really didn't like at all. It was kind of unnecessary. I hated the ending. The ending was so terrible. It was just horrible. I absolutely hated it, and I feel like that's part of the reason why I disliked it so much. But I also didn't like the characters. Like, they were really stupid. They made very, very stupid decisions, and you think they would have learned by now because I feel like they keep doing this, right? This family keeps making very, very poor decisions, and they never learn, and I was just over it. I did enjoy the uncle in this one. I guess, I don't remember, grandfather to some, but I really like his character and he's one of my favorites, and I think that's probably why I liked Rules of Magic better, which is the only other book I've read in this series and really enjoyed. So yeah, this wasn't for me. I had a lot of issues with it, but it was okay and it wasn't too slow of a read. It was pretty quick, so I got through it pretty quickly. Another book I read for this 48-hour readathon was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I thought this was fun. It was cute, but it just wasn't something that I absolutely loved. particularly because I don't enjoy the miscommunication trope in books. I think she did it well, and the reasoning behind it was very obvious, well done, well represented, but I don't like that trope. It bugs me, and it's not something that I really ever enjoy in my books at all, so that automatically is going to lower my enjoyment of this book. Plus, some of the characters, I didn't really enjoy how they were written. It was kind of odd to me and took me out of the story a bit, and I don't know, I didn't love it. It was fine. It was fun. It was so quick. I busted through this book. I feel like I do a lot with contemporary romances. It wasn't amazing, and I don't absolutely love it. Next, we have a short book that I had a great time with, and that was Mr. Bourne Secret History by Brandon Sanderson. This is kind of an additional novella to the original Miss Bourne trilogy, and I really don't want to talk about it a lot because I don't want to give anything away for anyone who hasn't read the original Miss Bourne trilogy. This book had a lot of cool connections, and I feel like if you are a Cosmere fan, this is a great book to read. If you are a Mistborn fan, it probably wouldn't have as much of an impact, but if you are really into his Cosmere and the connections and learning more about that world in general, this one is almost a must-read because it just pulls and ties so many things in. I think that the plot was not well done. It was very rushed. The pacing was extremely off. I feel like the time frame that this book was written over was excessive, and I understand why it had to be done that way, and I'm not saying that he didn't do a good job with what he was trying to do, but I just don't think you can write this short of a book over the time period of like 2 giant novels. So overall, it was okay in that aspect, but the connections and the things you learned and the little tidbits you get of the world were so much fun, and I absolutely love that. So I really had such a great time with this book, but if you're just reading it for the story and not anything to do with Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere world, it probably wouldn't have as big of an effect on you, and you might not like it. And the last book I'm going to talk about is Elementor Jack in the Pits of Altania. This is not the whole thing. Like, the whole thing of this is not what I read. This is a collection of a bunch of the novellas and short stories within the Cosmere, and I just read one section of it. It was fine. There was something interesting that happened that I think kind of piqued my interest and made me kind of question why it was the way that it was, and I think there's more interesting things that we might learn about that. But overall, it was funny, it was cute, the way it was written, it was very witty, and I did enjoy it, but it wasn't anything amazing for me. I wasn't in love with it, and I feel like it's not something I'm ever going to read again, but I'm glad that I did because I want to read everything within the Cosmere. Okay, moving on to the next book. We're kind of trying to get through because I have quite a few books to talk about. Next, we have Forgotten Souls by Mackenzie Mon. This is a self-published YA fantasy novel. It is the second book in her Soul of Terry series, with the first book being Immortal Sands. And this one, I can't obviously talk about what it's about, but the first one follows this woman who has escaped from this high security prison and is out on a mission to save her sister and to bring down this corrupt ruling family who has been ruling their land for a long, long time. This book was good. I think I liked the first one better. I feel like this one had a little bit more of a middle book feel to it, where we're really getting to know the world a lot more. We're starting to get a lot more information, and the things that we learned in here were really interesting, and it made me want to continue with the series for sure because I'm very intrigued. I still really had a good time reading this book though, and I really enjoyed it. I do feel like it definitely was a builder book, which is fine. I feel like most series have that book in them. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing with this series, and I think that the third book is going to be released this year. I'm not 100% positive, but I think there's going to be either 4 or 5 books in this series. So I'm excited to continue with it, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a nice, quick, easy YA read, and I definitely enjoy it. Next book, I really don't need to talk about a whole ton, and that is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Everyone knows what the series is about. This was reread for me, and I really enjoy this book. I like how they pull so many things together, the different things that we learn, and I love the different characters that get to step up and kind of be heroes in this book. So I really enjoy that aspect a lot. And I really enjoyed rereading this and seeing how my perspective is different on this read than it has been any other previous time. I feel like nostalgia still wins out on this because of the impact it had on me as a child. But overall, I still love it, and I still love being in this world. It just kind of feels comfortable for me. Next book was another subscriber pick one, and that is The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. This is the second book in his Burning series. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy or how many books is going to be in it, but this series is an African-inspired high fantasy adult series, and it follows this boy named Tao who's out for revenge, and he is going to do anything that it takes in order to get the revenge that he's seeking. I feel like this book definitely was different than the first one, but I feel like Tao, our main character, changed so much. It was a very odd switch, in my opinion. I don't know, I felt like I didn't love how we went with it, because it seemed like he was now all of a sudden caring so much more about the people and the people he couldn't save, and he was trying so much to save them, and he was the one that was in charge of making sure they were okay. And I'm like, dude, you don't care about that. All you care about is your revenge. All you've ever cared about is your revenge. And now all of a sudden your head flips and this is what you care about now. And it seemed like it was a very abrupt switch to me. And I couldn't really grasp that his character had developed that much in like no time. So I don't know. I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it. I still didn't really like Tao's main character, but I did like some of the world building that we got in here, and I think there's some very interesting things that have come into play, and I'm really excited for the third book. I just feel like that one could be the one that is my book of this series. I think that the things that we are coming towards is so much more magical and so much bigger, and I could see it being really, really amazing. So I still have high hopes for the rest of the series, but this one was still just okay for me. And the last book on this list that I have to talk about is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. So I read this one as a buddy read with my friend Angela from Angela Rose Reads, and we have been reading some dark academia books as buddy reads, and I loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. I was really invested in it. I loved the atmosphere of it. I loved the Alexandrian society aspect of it as well. I loved the twists. The ending was phenomenal, and I loved that so, so much. I did have a little bit of issues with the writing style, because you would be in a chapter and you'd start out in one place, and then all of a sudden it would jump you back like a couple days or a couple hours or something, and then jump you back to where you were. And I didn't really feel connected with that. I feel like it drew me out of the story a little bit and made it a little more confusing what we were doing, like putting things in order of how they were happening was a little bit more difficult with that. So I didn't really enjoy that writing style, and it was kind of frustrating for me when it kept happening over and over and over. It happened so much. It wasn't just, it was like a 1 or 2 time thing. It happened practically every chapter, it felt like, and I did not love that. But overall, it was fun. I am definitely going to be continuing with the series. I'm definitely going to be getting the new one when it comes out, published by Tor, and I am really excited to continue with this series. I think it was so well done. I really enjoyed her writing style. I think the magic system is really interesting, and there's so much more we can do with it and learn about it. So yeah, I enjoyed this book, and I think this is probably my favorite read of December. I didn't have any, oh my gosh, I didn't have any 5-star reads of December. That's kind of sad. But overall, this book was probably, yeah, my favorite of December. It was a good time, guys. It was good. Okay, those are the books that I read in December. I feel like I talked fairly quickly through those, but I needed to because there were so many of them. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them as well. I'm particularly kind of interested to see what people's thoughts are on Mistborn Secret History, because I feel like it could be very polarizing. So if you've read that and you have thoughts, let me know down in the comments. And as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button down below and the bell icon, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.